Chair to call Amy Callaghan to make her maiden speech.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to make my first speech in this place on such an important topic. It is my honour to stand before you all as the new SNP representative for Eastern Bartonshire. I cannot begin to describe how grateful I am to all those who have put their faith in me, to my family who are here today, to my outstanding campaign team, and to every single person who showed up at the ballot box on the 12th of December who entrusted me with their vote, and to those who didn't. Together we have made history. It is my promise that I shall fight tooth and nail at every turn to ensure that the people of Eastern Bartonshire, and indeed people of Scotland, will never feel left behind or ignored by their representative again. I can only hope that by the time my tenure in this seat draws to a close, sooner rather than later, in a progressive, independent Scotland, that I will have repaid the faith that voters have shown in me. I also stand before you with the unenviable task of following the maiden speeches of my predecessors, not least my good friend and now colleague, the Member of Parliament for Oakland and South Perthshire, Mr John Nicholson. I'm sure you will remember fondly, Madam Deputy Speaker, the eloquent and articulate way in which the history and beauty of my constituency has been described in this House. Not only is Eastern Bartonshire one of the most prosperous places to live in the country, giving its array of excellent state schools and unshakable community spirit, in areas like Bishopbriggs, Kirkintilloch, Bearsden and Mulgai, is a constituency that is steeped in history in more ways than one. Firstly, if you were to visit today, you would find the remains of the Antonine Wall, the northernmost point of the Roman Empire, still running through the area to this day. As any history buff shall tell you, of which I am sure there are many in this House, it is thought that this UNESCO World Heritage Site was built by the Romans in order to defend their mighty armies from the tenacity of the locals. Indeed, others say the case could equally be made that the Romans became enamoured by the sheer beauty of the countryside and by the campsies, that they simply decided to stop and take in the view, and they certainly wouldn't have been the last. Regardless of the reasoning for its construction, I do find it rather fitting, given the political climate we currently find ourselves in, that such a vast and seemingly unstoppable empire was halted in my Scottish constituency after said empire had conquered Europe. Perhaps there is a lesson to be learned there about ignoring the will of the people of Eastern Bartonshire and indeed the people of Scotland. As per tradition, I pay tribute to my predecessor Jo Swinson, both as a former MP for Eastern Bartonshire and as a former leader of the Liberal Democrats. In her time as the MP for Eastern Bartonshire, Jo achieved a great deal in encouraging young women into politics and indeed to reach their potential in all walks of life. I think what both Jo and I can bring to the table is to show young women right across the United Kingdom that whilst there are still barriers in place, we can smash them, and we should show people that there are no limitations to our worth. This brings me nicely on to my next point about the unique history of my constituency, one that was rightfully highlighted by Jo Swinson in her maiden speech in 2005. Eastern Bartonshire has a history of electing strong and ambitious women in their 20s. In particular, I'd like to pay homage to the late but inspirational Margaret Ewing. She won this unwinnable seat at the age of 29 with a majority of just 22 votes in 1974. Miss Ewing entered the Commons under the name of Margaret Bain with a tenacious desire to get the very best for the people of Scotland and to defend the rights of those less fortunate than ourselves. It is a damning indictment of the state of this Parliament that is exactly what I plan to do with the platform I have been given. Nevertheless, these women have paved the way for young female politicians like myself, and it is my hope that I too can serve as an example to young women in Eastern Bartonshire and indeed across the country that they can make a difference and that no door is or should be closed to you regardless of your circumstances. Madam Deputy Speaker, I am delighted to be making my maiden speech on the topic of health and social care. I was not shy during my campaign in highlighting the profound impact the NHS has had on my life. I certainly would not be standing here as the newly elected MP for Eastern Bartonshire, just shy of being 6 years cancer-free, had it not been for our NHS in Scotland. To the surgeon, Mr John Scott, who saved my life, not just once but twice, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And to organisations like Teenage Cancer Trust, who guided me throughout my cancer journey and are immeasurable support to young people facing cancer diagnosis across the UK, thank you for your unparalleled support that you gave to me and to so many other young people. But the issue I'd like to highlight most in respect to teenage and young adult cancer is the mental health impact it has, an area I have done considerable personal work on. What I would like to say is that as a society, There is an ingrained assumption that once someone has the all clear from a diagnosis like cancer, they should return to normal. I could not be clearer that normal does not exist after a cancer diagnosis, much less as a young person where your world has been turned upside down. You've had a harsh realisation that you're not invincible, and you could also be facing fertility issues and the loss of a family you never yet knew you wanted to have. I consider myself unlucky for a long time that I faced this diagnosis so young, but I am now at the point in my journey where I can put this behind me and use the platform I have to achieve great things for young cancer patients across the United Kingdom. My journey resonated with the good people of East Bartonshire who put their trust in me to come down to this place and best represent them, and I can tell you that's exactly what I will do. So my clear message to the government benches is to keep your hands off Scotland's NHS. I have watched many of my colleagues' maiden speeches and I've noticed that they like to quote Rabbie Burns. In the same spirit, I thought it only fitting to quote a newer generation of Scots poet whose writing could not be more apt to the situation the people of Scotland find ourselves. Madam Deputy Speaker, Jerry Cinnamon wrote, "Are you happy that nuclear weapons are dumped on the Clyde? Fighting wars for the wealth of the few, how many have died? You can bury my bones, but the truth of it can't be denied. Will you stand and be counted? Because I'll be there stood by your side. Hope over fear, don't be afraid. Tell the Westminster Tories that Scotland's no longer your slave." Which brings me on to why I'm here and why my colleagues were elected and re-elected as SNP MPs by voters across Scotland. After 60 years of not voting for the UK governments we end up with, it's hardly a surprise support for independence is at an all-time high. But it has nothing to do with the so-called wave of nationalism those out with my party claim is sweeping Scotland, and instead everything to do with the fact we offer hope. Hope in the face of adversity, hope in the face of soaring food bank use, hope in the face of nuclear weapons on our waters, and hope for the people of Scotland that this is not the best there is out there.